All right. We usually talk to Craig on a Thursday, but I think it's sometimes a bit earlier, but sometimes a bit later. But anyhow, he's joining us now. Welcome to the show, mate. Lovely to have you on. Are you going to a Anzac Day service tomorrow?
No, not tomorrow for the first time for a while. Just not near an area where there is one, so it'll be a pass for
Oh,
me tomorrow.
okay. All right. You're a family history. Well, you'd know your own family history, obviously. Any of your lot fight in the wars?
Yeah, my father's uncle, so my great uncle,
Great uncle. Yeah.
tried twice. He got into the army on the second go, went to Featherston, and then Sling Camp in England,
Yep.
and then went to the Somme. So he wasn't at Gallipoli, but he was at the Somme, and then he got medevaced out to the New Zealand hospital in Hampshire, where he died of an emphysema or a flu from the trenches. And I visited the hospital, Brockhurst Hospital in Hampshire, a couple of years ago, and let the locals know I was coming. And they met me off the train. They took me to the church, went round the back and saw my great uncle's grave. And I brought a little bit of New Zealand from here with me and left it on the grave. Quite moving the way that they've kept that alive, that whole Brockenhurst experience for Kiwis that are buried there. And they're very grateful, of course, for the service of Kiwis helping to, defend liberal values and from their perspective, defending England. So yeah, it's pretty moving when you have that association back in time, and you think, why did he go to war, and what was his brothers thinking? And until I went and did some research, my dad's not around anymore, but my dad didn't talk about it. My grandfather didn't talk about it, but in one of my drawers here, I have the bronze medallion that was given by the government to soldiers that fought or didn't return. I don't know which one, but it's a I guess you call it a token, a thank you um, for him doing a service and not coming back.
It's interesting you mentioned two words there, Sling Camp and the Somme. I had two great uncles as well, Albert Arthur or Arthur, we used to know him as, and Hector. They both were killed at the Somme in that same thing, and they trained at Sling Camp before they went there. In fact, my uncle Hector Laws, he landed on Gallipoli, tomorrow, 1915. So he was in that first wave.
Yeah,
God,
yeah,
aren't we glad we hadn't gone through that experience in our lives just quietly, Craig?
yeah. And I've been to the Somme area in France, and it's a flat, horrible
Yeah,
landscape.
yeah,
And
same.
when I was there, the weather was pretty poor, and it was misty, and ground was soggy, and there's rivers down the ravines. It would have been a nightmare when you're 300 meters apart from each other, and your line of fire was probably less than a kilometre then with some of the larger guns. So yeah, dreadful positions to be in.
Amazing. But they bore it stoically. I mean, the incredible thing when you think about it is the discipline that they exerted upon themselves. Not had exerted upon themselves, but they exerted it upon themselves. That sort of that sense of social order, doing your job, not flinching. You know, I, I just
Yeah,
find it
yeah.
incredible.
Now I have
Listen,
a I
mate.
have a
Sorry, carry on.
I've also got a small photo album that he must have taken. Andrew Stobo must have taken in and around Brockenhurst when he was there. So the hospital's not there anymore. It was taken over by the UK government for the services of the New Zealand military needs, but the hospital's gone, but the church is still there. So there's quite a lot of links back there. But you'll always remember on Anzac Day what those people did. And in case my father's great uncle, lost his life.
Yep. No, and the First World War, you just it's funny actually when you and I were at school, and I think from our generation, maybe you were different, but from our generation there was a complete Anzac Day, whoop-de-doo, you know. But now, gosh, it's become so much of our identity. I think it really is New Zealand's national day, don't you think?
Yeah, my first year at school was the last year of Barracks, and Barracks was training for a week. The whole school would
Really?
have the decommissioned 303s from the armory. We'd all have a 303 rifle slung over, and we'd be doing marching up and down the backfield, doing formations, and then the local um, army reps would come with a powder flash detonation device and blow up a helmet to show us how high the helmet would go, which was the highlight of the whole thing. But yeah, we learned to to your point about teamwork and mixing and stoicism, you had to do the drills. You had to meet all the other kids that joined you in your first year. You're in different platoons marching around, so you got to know each other. You got to know discipline. You got to know to do as you're told. Pull your socks up. So that was the last year of barracks at the school, but it's surprising how long it lasted. I mean, that's
Yeah,
1973,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
well after World War Two.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Listen, just while we're on that topic, my father, when he died, gave me his Napier Boys High School. Well, I got them from him. His Napier Boys High School magazines. Now, he didn't fight in the Second World War, and you know my father. Um, he was, I think, in the seventh form in 1949. But I read it a couple of weeks ago. Do you know in 1949, and this is how weak and soft and pathetic we are, and you've just talked about barracks and cadets and things like that. They were firing live anti-aircraft guns and machine guns as part of their training at Napier Boys High School. Isn't that extraordinary?
Yeah, under quality supervision, I'm sure,
Well, I'm
because
sure, but
some of those kids.
nevertheless, you're fighting live ACAGs and live,
Yeah,
Bren guns. I mean, good God. I mean, and they all had to
New
do
Zealand,
it. It was all
the
part
New,
of, and off you go. Remarkable.
I'm sure the New Zealand the New Zealand Army today be quite envious to hear of those sources of ammo.
All right, now moving on. Listen, just before we talk about matters economic and political, but and fiscal, I've just seen a story today in the New Zealand Herald. You've probably seen it as well, which says that the Huntley Power Unit may stay operational for another 10 years. That's from Genesis, and that they're continuing talks, quote unquote, with market participants about keeping a third coal and gas powered Rankine. I don't know what a Rankine is. You'll probably tell me what it is. Going until 2035, along with two others into the next decade as well. Is that how bad things have come? That we actually need to keep on burning coal and gas if we are going to be assured of energy supply in this country?
Yes, so the backstory is August last year when we were short of hydro capacity and we had a gas problem. And it put a lot of pressure on existing gas supplies, which led to lots of agreements to take over existing gas supplies. And Huntley was fired up, and coal bought in. But within a couple of weeks, the rains came, and Genesis was left holding the candy, so to speak, with large coal supplies and no contracts. So this year, the major gentailers, or the gentailers, around the table trying to negotiate terms by which it makes sense for Genesis to stockpile Indonesian coal, which is close to 1 million tonnes will be stockpiled, to make those those furnace units open when required and with more capacity, so the number 3 unit. I don't know whether they got to an agreement, but you can understand the commercial issues where all the heavy lifting's done by one gentailer, Genesis, but the optionality sits with the others who want to have the use of those units, but don't necessarily want to pay for them on a long-term basis. But I'm sure they'll get to a commercial arrangement such that it is commercially viable for Genesis to do what they're doing.
Listen, the other thing that Genesis have said is that they want to advance negotiations with Carbona and Forrester, whoever they are, for biomass supply as an alternative to coal at Huntley. What's biomass supply? Is that wood?
So it's just wood, yeah, forestry wood, exactly. Yep.
Why don't they call it wood then? So we've got enough wood in New Zealand to burn in electricity companies. Sorry, at Huntley. God, really?
Yeah, so you need to track the supplies and store it to be able to use it. So that's part of the issue. It has been tried elsewhere in New Zealand um, on smaller scales at a commercial level. The question is always the unit of energy, the unit of heat you get out of a piece of coal compared to equivalent size piece of wood. So it's there are different angles, some of which includes price and cost. But yeah, when you think about the stockpiling of nearly 1 million tons of coal imported from Indonesia, and we still know that we've got less than 9 years supply of gas in the existing gas fields, and we know that today, searching for other solutions like biomass today makes sense if you don't go down a conservation route, for example.
Um, the other thing I was got a bit of a shock by, and somebody pointed out to me on a thing this morning, and it was to do with we were talking about the opening of the Stockman mine on the west coast and protesters getting involved. That we've talked to the mayor of Grey, who says bugger off because you don't come from here. But I didn't realise you actually had to burn coal to make solar panels, and the Chinese do it on a regular basis. Did you know that?
Well, much of China's power comes from coal-fired power
Power
stations.
stations. Yeah, there you
So
go.
yeah, so their electricity is derived from coal. So to the extent that China is the world's largest um, developer or processor of rare earth minerals that go into batteries, for example. I mean, they don't have the ore necessarily, but they have a very strong stranglehold on the manufacturing of the processing of those rare earth metals. So yeah, and to process it, they need electricity, and electricity
Yeah,
comes
yeah, I
from
suppose that
coal-fired
makes
power
sense.
stations.
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
yep.
Oh, gotcha.